Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Very happy to welcome you to Dr. Edding's class because you are, in fact, the subject of this class. Ladies and gentlemen. What's the difference? Well, as the late comedian and beloved misanthrope George Carlin once said, women are crazy and men are stupid. And the reason that women are crazy is that men are stupid. Well, that may be a contributing factor, but for real answers, we need to look past sexist double standards in the Overton window of comedy. We need science. Are women any crazier than men? Are men any stupider than women? And what happens at the extremes when women go full crazy and men go full stupid? Well, what exactly drives them to the brink? The stereotypes don't always hold in the face of the facts. The most evident place where women fall behind their stereotype is their violent crime rate. I'm sorry, ladies, but you'll never be as good as men when it comes to murdering people. According to the FBI, men represent about 90% of all homicide perpetrators and 78% of homicide victims. Not only are men vastly overrepresented in crime statistics, we also account for virtually 100% of casualties of war, according to the Congressional Research Service. And when we're not at war, we're generally doing the most dangerous things we can think of: melting steel, mining for coal, fixing power lines, wrestling crocodiles, and fighting fires. I've never met a woman who wanted to do any of those things. Clearly, we are crazier. But why? What makes men so crazy? Ironically, women. Let me explain. According to a study published in Evolutionary Psychology, men, especially single men, exhibit much more risk-taking behavior than women, especially when women are present. Evolutionary theory postulates that men who successfully take more risks may be more likely to reproduce successfully, as they are able to achieve a more dominant status and outcompete other males. Risk-taking behavior might also be a form of mating display, proving one's imperviousness to danger and thus fitness for reproduction. After all, ladies, all else being equal, who would you rather date? A pro surfer or a furniture salesman? Another facet of male insanity driven by sexual selection is the male warrior hypothesis, which states that due to competition for reproductive resources, men in particular are optimally evolved for violent intergroup conflict. According to a study published in the Royal Society, men's tendency to engage in coalitional aggression is manifest in all cultures and is therefore considered to be a human universal. So, in a world where women choose the most competent men to reproduce with, generally men higher in social status than themselves, a man has to be just a little crazier than the next guy for us all to make it to the next generation. Multiply that by 3 billion, and the craziest person on Earth is undoubtedly a man. Does that make us stupider? Well, according to research, the average IQ of males and females is pretty much the same, with females taking a slight lead in verbal ability and males taking a slight lead in spatial ability, which probably explains why we're so good at throwing sharp and dangerous objects at each other. Now, not only are men better at killing each other, we're even better at killing ourselves. That's right, according to a study in Medical Science Monitor, although men attempt suicide less frequently than women, they are generally more successful at it when they do. Men tend to choose more lethal means to their own death, such as hanging or a self-inflicted gunshot, than women, who are generally more likely to take a lethal overdose of drugs or exsanguinate themselves. Another possible contributor to men's successful self-destruction is their lack of supportive relationships. Women tend to be more socially interdependent, which may lessen their actual desire for death. Who'd have thunk? Whereas men tend to be more socially reserved, and fail to be open about their emotions with their peers in the same way as women, probably due to our evolutionary history of dominance competition, thus leaving men fewer avenues of suicide mitigation. We have feelings too. You just don't know it until we kill ourselves. So, thanks to evolution, life as a man is lonely, violent, and short. Women tend to prefer those men who are capable of killing every other man in the room, if necessary, but who can still rock a baby to sleep afterwards. It's a fine line, fellas. And those of us who fail to develop a sophisticated sense of dry gallows humor tend to go, well, crazy. But sometimes, just sometimes, it's a woman who picks up the axe and screams, "Here's Johnny." And now, we found out why.
We all know that men are more violent than women, whether it's personally known or just a way of life that we've all come to accept. But is this an innate difference? Are baby boys born violent, or at least more violent than baby girls? From the time we are born, men and women exhibit different behavior in terms of violence. Little boys are biologically more rough and rowdy. Okay, now I know that some may argue that this is culturally influenced, or a behavior that is taught as men grow older. However, it is an occurrence across communities and cultures around the world, and has been consistent over generations. Young boys are attracted to more violent play methods and toys, such as fake guns, toy swords, and aggressive sports like tackle football or lacrosse. And little girls are innately more attracted to housemaking or real-life games, such as playing house, using easy bake ovens, taking care of baby dolls, and pretending to clean. This is because from the beginning of development, girls' brains are wired to care for an infant. Our bodies and minds are biologically predestined to be mothers, and men are biologically predestined to compete for a mate. This begins as little boys are starting to develop their motor skills and begin to interact with others. Boys' minds are wired for constructive toys, like building and, even better, destroying. These are toys like Lincoln Logs or Legos, which support the violent nature of boys' play behavior. Not only do little boys prefer more aggressive toys and play types, but they prefer to use violence and straightforward aggression to resolve things instead of verbal aggression the way young girls do. From a young age, girls prefer to use their words and other passive forms of aggression to communicate problems. A study about the developmental trends in regard to direct and indirect aggression by Dr. Kaj Bajorkovitz, Christy M.J. Laggard-Spetz, and Ari Kayukainen shows that girls make greater use of indirect means of aggression, whereas boys tend to employ direct means. This study was done with groups of children split up by gender and age groups. A group of 8-year-old boys and a group of 8-year-old girls, a group of 11-year-old boys and a group of 11-year-old girls, and a group of 15-year-old boys and a group of 15-year-old girls. They were all researched in terms of aggression used to solve problems. The main difference between the genders has been that boys use physical aggression strategies, while girls prefer verbal ones. This study suggests that the differentiation between direct and indirect strategies of aggression presents a more exact picture. Indirect aggressive strategies were not yet fully developed among the 8-year-old girls, but they were already prominent among the 11-year-old girls. And boys use more intense violence and physical aggression as they grow older. The 8-year-old group of boys seem to resolve problems both verbally and physically, but when the 11-year-old and 15-year-old boys were researched, they found that they were mainly only using violence when a problem arose. So, as men grow older, they become more violent and use physical aggression, to resolve issues in their social groups. And as girls grow up, they tend to have stronger verbal skills and use words and logic to solve their problems between one another. This may help This may help play into the stereotype that women are passive-aggressive and don't confront problems head-on, and the stereotype that men go head first into their problems and only use violence and no logic. This tendency for aggression in boys often follows children through puberty into their adult lives. Another recent study that was done by Claire Hughes and Judy Dunn shows that boys who are attracted to more violent play behavior as children are often more violent and antisocial as they mature into puberty. Boys who have more aggressive tendencies as young children grow into antisocial teenagers who show aggression through violence. They also have a harder time socializing with peer groups and understanding certain social cues. This can lead to more violent behavior in their adult lives, such as assault and murder.
Hi, I'm Katie, and I'm going to be talking about females and violent offenses. I'm going to hit on some key points on how common it is, some biological factors, and the social repercussions for it. In 2012, the FBI published a list of the arrests that they had made and what the numbers were for the different offenses. So in 2012, the amount of arrests there were 9,446,660. Of those arrested, 6,972,023 were men, and 2,474,637 were female. Of those that were murder, there were 8,514. Of those murders, men committed 7,549 of them, and women committed only 965. With aggravated assault, there were 301,065, and of those, 232,041 were male, and 69,024 were female. With arson as a violent crime, there was 404,037 violent crimes as arson committed, and of those, 323,489 were male, and 80,548 were female. So that just gives you an idea of some of the violent crimes that were being committed and how many were men and how many were women. So let's talk about some of the biological reasons why women might commit violent offenses. Women who commit violent offenses are prevalently dealing with mental illness, whether that's severe anxiety or a kind of psychosis. Some people also believe that women are much more likely to commit homicide or violent offenses if they grew up in a bad environment. So women who grew up in an unstable environment or with poor socioeconomic backgrounds, around drugs or abuse, women who didn't get emotional support from their parents, they're more likely to commit violent offenses when they get older. Whether that means that these women go through being molested, raped, or they're maltreated by their parents, it's those who have their cognitive development and socio-emotional development interrupted in their childhood. These women are more at risk than their female peers who grew up in stable environments with emotionally available and involved parents, although this obviously is not always the case. Cognitive development is something cited as being important in looking at women versus men committing violent crimes. Women often develop much faster cognitively and are better with social skills and talking to people and expressing their emotions much easier than their male counterparts. During that developmental period, boys who aren't developing as well cognitively or are developing it very slowly or poorly are the men who are more at risk to be committing violent crimes later in life. This is another reason why it can seem so surprising when women do commit violent crimes. There's also a causal link found between higher testosterone levels and higher levels of aggression. So a sample that was done on women who had a history of violent behavior showed that they had higher testosterone levels in their saliva than women who didn't have that same history. When a female commits a violent offense, it's uncommon. So let's look at how some of the social repercussions come into play when women do commit violent offenses. Because it goes against societal norms, women aren't commonly risk takers in society. Women want to protect the innocent and stay alive in order to care for themselves and therefore care for others. It's viewed as unnatural, and when it does happen, it's often explained away that it isn't in a way that it isn't for men. There's a few dominant characters that come into play when females do this. They're depicted as either the evil woman or the bad little girl or the mad woman. There's a big link between femininity and hysteria. People believe that because of menstrual cycles and postpartum depression, women are more commonly going to go crazy than men. But when women kill, it's only understood when it's for survival, like women killing their rapists or their abusers, or to keep a man or to keep another woman away from their man. It's not understood when it's done for maybe the same reason a man would do it, or just to do it. It's easier to understand it and to accept it if these are the reasons why, but those aren't always the reasons why women commit violent offenses. There's a multitude of reasons, and some of the reasons mirror the same reasons why men kill or commit violent offenses as well. Female homicide is overall just not as well digested in society as it is for males. So as you can see, it's not that there aren't women committing violent crimes, they're just not doing it as often as men are.